The thing about routines is that they build a nice, solid wall around your world. You know what to expect. You know the sound your old Ford makes when it finally turns over on a cold morning. You know how the coffee will taste from your dented thermos. And you know exactly how many seconds it takes for the heavy magnetic locks on the front door of the Tetradyne building to disengage. 3 seconds. A low hum, a heavy clack, and the green light would flash. Every night, Monday to Friday, for the last 4 years. It was the rhythm that started my shift. The downbeat to 8 hours of sterile silence and the squeak of my janitorial cart. But tonight, there was no rhythm. There was only a void. The door was already open. Not just unlocked, but physically ajar. A dark slice cut into the monolithic glass and steel face of the building. A cold breeze, smelling of damp asphalt and coming rain, snaked out and kissed my cheek. It felt wrong. Everything in my gut, every primal instinct that had been dulled by 4 years of pushing a mop, screamed that it was wrong. Tetradyne wasn't the kind of place you left a door open. I didn't know what they did here, not really. Something with data, or service, or, well, the pay was damn good. And the only rule was to keep my head down and my mouth shut. The building was a silent, sprawling labyrinth of identical grey corridors. Windowless offices with designations like GST 541 and R&D 9B, and a level of security that made Fort Knox look like a garden shed. You didn't just leave the door open. My hand hovered over the cool metal of the push bar. I could just turn around, get back in the Ford, drive home, and pretend I never saw it. Call in sick. But the thought of explaining why, that was worse. They were meticulous people. They'd ask questions I couldn't answer. And besides, I needed the money. Always the goddamn money. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and pathetic. No answer. Just the whisper of the wind through the gap. With a sigh that felt like it came from the soles of my worn-out boots, I stepped inside. The air was colder in here than it was outside, thick and still, and carrying a faint, coppery tang I couldn't place. I let the heavy door swing shut behind me. It closed with a soft whoosh, and then the final, deafening thump of the magnetic locks engaging. The sound echoed down the main lobby. And just like that, I was sealed inside. The lobby was a cathedral of corporate anonymity. Gleaming marble floors, a brushed steel reception desk, a giant abstract sculpture that looked like a chrome pretzel. It was also completely empty. Not unusual for 9 PM, but the power was on. The computer monitors behind the desk glowing with the company's serene blue logo. But the chair was empty. Deborah, the night security guard, a woman built like a brick smokestack with a surprisingly gentle smile, was gone. Her half-finished crossword and a cold cup of coffee sat on the desk. A tiny, abandoned island in an ocean of silence. My cart was parked in its usual spot, in the alcove by the elevators. The familiar squeak of its one bad wheel was a small comfort as I pushed it past the desk and towards the security nexus. That was always my first stop. Clock in, check the shift log for any special cleanup requests, usually a coffee spill in the conference room or a sick employee's aftermath. The door to the security room was also ajar. That's when the real fear set in. I nudged the door open with my foot. The room was a mess of flickering screens, a dozen different camera feeds showing empty hallways, vacant labs, and silent server farms. But every single monitor, from the smallest to the wall-mounted jumbo screen, had a flashing, blood-red banner overlaid on the image. The same 5 words, repeated over and over in stark block capitals. Anomaly found. Secure all exits. I stopped in my tracks. Secure all exits. I'd just done that. I'd just locked myself in. My eyes darted to another screen, one that usually displayed internal memos. This one was different. It was a static alert page. Alert. Priority Omega. Subject. Containment breach. Unit Z7. Sub-level 3. Asset designation. The Charlatan. Status. Uncontained. Active within facility. Directive. Do not engage. Do not trust visuals. Shelter in place. Await recovery team. All exits are... The message cut off there. The rest of the text a jumble of corrupted characters. The Charlatan. It sounded like a stage magician. Not something that warranted this alert. I looked back at the main banner. Anomaly found. Not intruder. Not suspect. Anomaly. The word felt strange. Just then, I heard something in the corridor outside. I held my breath and peered out of the security room, down the long grey corridor of Sector G. And I saw something. A thick, dark, glistening trail, snaking its way along the polished linoleum floor. It started from the direction of the sub-level elevators and headed deeper into the building. A sluggish, ruby-red river. Blood. So much blood. But there was no body. No victim. Just the trail, as if someone was dragging a leaking sack of paint down the hall. I realized what that terrible smell was now. I had to get out. The directive on the screen was clear, but I'd sealed the door. My janitor's keycard had access to the utility closets and the break rooms, not the main entrance controls. Deborah could have overridden it, but Deborah was gone. My mind raced. There had to be an emergency phone, a panic button. But leaving the relative safety of the security room to go looking for one, I pushed the cart ahead of me, the squeaking wheel sounding obscenely loud in the dead quiet. It was a pathetic shield, but it was something. I followed the blood trail, my rubber-soled shoes making quiet, sticking sounds where the trail had begun to dry. The red river led me down hallway after identical hallway. Every door was closed, every office dark. After what felt like an eternity, I turned a corner into the GST wing. The blood trail smeared past a series of cubicle-style offices, the kind used by junior data analysts, or whatever it was they did here. And then, I heard a soft, choked sob. It came from one of the offices, GST 541. The door was slightly open. The sound was so human, so terrified, it cut through my own fear. Someone else was alive. I pushed the door open. "Hello?" I whispered. Huddled in the corner, between a filing cabinet and a desk, was a man. He was wearing an impeccably tailored dark grey suit, the kind I'd only ever seen in magazines. Not a single wrinkle on it. His hair looked perfect, a handsome salt and pepper arrangement that looked like it had been styled by a professional just minutes ago. He was weeping into his hands, his shoulders shaking. Hey, it's okay, I said, my voice softer now. I'm Frank, I'm the janitor. He looked up, and his face was a mask of sheer, unadulterated terror. His eyes were wide, and his skin pale. He looks to be in his late 40s, with a square jaw and features that belonged on a recruitment poster. Pinned to the lapel of his suit was a Tetradyne ID badge. Did you see it? He whimpered, his voice trembling. Oh God, what was that thing? I didn't see anything, I said, taking a cautious step into the room. Just a mess. What happened? Where is everyone? I don't know, he stammered, scrambling to his feet. He brushed himself down, a bizarrely fastidious gesture for someone who had just been crying in a corner. The alarms went off, this red flashing light, then screaming, so much screaming. I saw Dr. Albright from Biochem, and this thing, it just pulled him apart. I just ran and hid in here. His eyes were darting around the room, around me, as if he expected the monster to burst through the wall at any second. I noticed his suit, pristine and clean. There was blood all over the hallway, but not a single drop on him. I'm Arthur, he said, extending a hand. His hand was steady, his grip firm. It didn't match the trembling wreck he'd been a moment ago. Arthur Penwright, I'm in accounts. I shook his hand. It was cool and dry. I looked at his ID badge. The photo was a perfect match. The name read, Arthur Penwright, Senior Accounts Manager. We have to get out of here, Arthur, I said, my own panic returning. The main door's locked. I locked it when I came in. His face fell. Locked? Why would you do that? I didn't know. The door was open. I thought... I trailed off, feeling like an idiot. No, it's okay. You didn't know, he said, his voice becoming calmer, more authoritative. There must be an emergency release, a fire exit, something. The fire exit's only open with a facility-wide alarm, I said, remembering the orientation lecture from 4 years ago. And this isn't a fire. Arthur paced the small office for a moment, running a hand through his perfect hair. It didn't move. Okay, think. The main entrance. Can you get us to the main entrance? If we can get there, maybe we can find a manual override. Deborah in security would know. Deborah's gone, I said flatly. He paled again. Oh, God. Okay, well, you and me then. We'll get to the lobby. We have to try. There was something about his sudden take charge attitude that felt reassuring. He was an executive, a man used to being in control. I was just a janitor. Following him felt like the right thing to do. We made our way back into the corridor. He stayed close behind me, his expensive leather shoes making soft taps on the floor. He flinched at the sight of the blood trail, but he kept moving. I tried to find a way out earlier, he whispered as we walked. I went towards the sub-levels, but the noises were worse down there. I got scared, panicked. That's when I ran and hid. It made sense. The alert said the breach was on sub-level 3. We retraced my steps, past the endless grey doors. Every shadow seemed to move. Every flicker of a distant light felt like a predator's eye opening. But we saw nothing. Heard nothing more than our own breathing and footsteps. Finally, the grand marble lobby came into view. It was just as we'd left it, silent, empty, and sterile. "Okay," Arthur said, his voice low. "The security desk. There has to be a master control." We hurried over to the desk. The computer monitor still glowed with the benign Tetradyne logo. Arthur sat in Deborah's chair and started clicking the mouse, his brow furrowed in concentration. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Passwords, override codes, emergency protocols. Nothing worked. Everything was locked down. "Damn it," he hissed, slamming his hand on the desk. "It's a total lockdown. Nothing's responding. We're trapped." Despair washed over me. We were locked in this concrete tomb with something that pulled people apart. Then I looked at the heavy front door. It was solid glass and steel, but it was still glass. The solid concrete was saved for the lower levels. The higher-ups still wanted a layer of refined corporate class up here, so they'd gone for glass. No doubt, to hide the scent of whatever it was they did down there. "What if we break it?" I asked. Arthur looked from the door to me. "With what?" I looked at my cart, at the heavy steel bucket, the solid metal ringer. Then I looked at the chrome pretzel sculpture. It was bolted to the floor, but the pretzel itself. "Help me with this," I said, walking over to the sculpture. It took both of us, grunting and straining, but we managed to break one of the heavy chrome loops free from its base. It was heavy and awkward, but it was solid metal. "Okay," I panted, heaving it up to my shoulder. "Stand back." Arthur retreated to the far wall, his face a mixture of fear and hope. I took a deep breath, swung the chrome bar with all of my might, and slammed it against the glass door. A deafening crack echoed through the lobby, and a spiderweb of fractures erupted from the point of impact. The glass was reinforced and layered, but it wasn't unbreakable. I swung, again and again. On the fourth hit, the glass gave way with a tremendous crash, shattering into a million tiny cubes that cascaded onto the marble floor. A wave of fresh, rain-scented night air washed over us. We were free. "Go," I yelled at Arthur. "Get out of here. Call the police. Call someone. Tell them what happened." He didn't need telling twice. He scrambled through the broken frame of the door, his pristine suit catching for a moment on a jagged edge of glass. And then he was gone, running out into the dark, rainy parking lot. He didn't even look back. I stood there for a moment, my chest heaving, the heavy chrome bar still in my hand. Relief washed over me, so potent it made my knees weak. I'd done it. I'd gotten one person out at least. But then, another thought crept in. The alert. Containment breach, Unit Z7. Whatever that thing was, it was still in here. And what if the recovery team arrived and didn't know what they were dealing with? I looked down at my janitor's uniform. This wasn't my job. This wasn't my problem. I should have run with him. But I couldn't. Some stupid, misplaced sense of duty. The same instincts that made me clean up a mess I didn't make took over. I needed to see. I needed to know what we were dealing with. I had to go to the source. Leaving the broken door and the promise of freedom behind me, I turned back into the silent, waiting building. I headed for the sub-level elevators. The blood trail had started there, so that's where I would go. The elevator descended with a smooth, hydraulic hum. The numbers on the display counting down. L, B1, B2, B3. The doors slid open onto another grey corridor, but this one felt different. Somehow, the air was even colder down here. The coppery smell of blood was overwhelming. The trail on the floor here was no longer a trail. It was a vast, smeared pool. The signs on the wall pointed the way. Z1 through Z5 to the left, Z6 through Z10 to the right. I went right. The corridor ended at a single, heavy-looking door, like a bank vault. The designation plate next to it read, Containment Unit Z7. The door was off its hinges. It had been torn from the wall, the thick steel bent and twisted like wet cardboard. The frame was a mangled wreck of splintered concrete and severed wires. It lay in the middle of the corridor, in the pool of blood. Whatever had been inside, it hadn't picked the lock. It had walked right through the wall. My hand, slick with sweat, tightened on the chrome bar I still carried. I peered past the ruined doorway, into the room, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was an apartment, a small, neatly furnished studio. There was a comfortable-looking sofa, a bookshelf filled with novels and history books, a small television, even a little kitchenette. It was the most normal, most human space I'd seen in the entire building. It looked like someone lived here. My foot nudged something on the floor just outside the doorway. I looked down. It was a clipboard, stained with a bloody footprint. The form clipped to it was a behavioural observation sheet. At the top, in bold letters, it read, Asset, the charlatan, Z7. I crouched down, my hands shaking, and read the notes scribbled by some long-dead doctor. Subject continues to display advanced mimicry. Has requested reading materials, specifically biographies. Shows a preference for successful, authoritative figures. Seems to be studying them. Caution. Asset's primary defense mechanism is psychological manipulation. It can adopt personas with frightening accuracy, mirroring speech patterns, memories, and emotional responses absorbed from its victims. It projects an aura of helplessness and trustworthiness to lure prey into a state of complacency. Addendum. Physical form is mutable, but it prefers to maintain a bipedal, humanoid shape for ease of interaction. When threatened or preparing to absorb a target, its true form is chaotic. Extreme caution must be exercised. It does not just kill its victims, it steals their identities, their very essence, leaving behind a husk. My eyes scanned the last line, written in a frantic, almost illegible scrawl. Do not let him touch you. That is how he does it. Something that takes on other people's identities, steals their face. It didn't sound real. My gaze was drawn back into the room, into the cosy, domestic scene. Tucked behind the sofa, mostly hidden from view, was a pair of legs. They were bent at an angle that legs shouldn't bend. With a sense of final, soul-crushing certainty, I stepped over the ruined door and into the room. I walked around the sofa. There, crumpled on the floor like a discarded doll, was a body. It was a man in a torn and blood-soaked grey suit. His limbs were twisted and broken, his chest cavity a ruin. But it was his face that made me choke on my own breath. It was the same square jaw, the same handsome features, the same salt and pepper hair, now matted with blood. It was Arthur Penwright, the real Arthur Penwright, the empty husk left behind. The man in the suit, the pristine clothes, the perfectly styled hair. The sudden shift from whimpering victim to calm authority figure. The way he knew exactly what buttons to push to make me trust him. I'd escorted it to the exit. I'd broken down the door for it. I'd let it out into the world. I stood there, frozen, in the silent, blood-spattered apartment, deep beneath the earth. The clipboard falling from my numb fingers. I thought of the man I'd let go, running out into the rainy night, free to walk into any city or any home, free to become anyone he chose. Behind me, far away in the lobby, I heard the faint sound of the emergency shutters, a heavy, metallic grinding. The recovery team's protocol, probably, sealing the breach now that the anomaly was no longer inside, sealing everything, including me. The thing I let out of here, it doesn't just kill you, it replaces you. It's out there now, wearing a dead man's face and a charming smile, walking among us. So tell me, as you look at the people you pass on the street, your friends, your family, your loved ones, how can you be sure that they are who they say they are?